They're already gone, you just haven't accepted it yet. There comes a moment in life where truth stops whispering and starts echoing. Not loudly, not dramatically, but persistently. In the quiet spaces of your mind, in the pauses between conversations, in the heavy feeling you carry without fully understanding why. A relationship that once felt natural now feels forced. A connection that once brought peace now brings confusion. And no matter how much you try to ignore it, something inside you keeps asking the same question. How much longer can this continue? Stoicism teaches something most people spend years avoiding. To see things as they truly are. Not as we wish them to be. Not as they once were. Not as they could be someday. But exactly as they are, right now. And when you begin to look at your relationship through that lens, without excuses, without emotional filters, without fear, you start to notice things you can no longer unsee. Small shifts. Subtle changes. Patterns that repeat themselves. Moments that leave you feeling unsettled. At first, you brush them off. You tell yourself it's normal. Every relationship has challenges. Every couple goes through phases. You remind yourself of the good times, the laughter, the memories, the connection you once had. And for a while, that's enough to keep you holding on. But over time, something changes. The effort becomes one-sided. The conversations become shorter. The understanding becomes weaker. And the emotional distance grows wider. You start to feel like you are trying to hold together something that is slowly falling apart. Not all at once, but piece by piece, day by day. And the most difficult part is this. There is no single moment where everything breaks. No clear ending. No obvious conclusion. Just a gradual realization that what you have is no longer what it used to be. And maybe, no longer what it should be. The Stoics believe that suffering often comes not from reality itself, but from our resistance to it. From our refusal to accept what is already true. We hold on, not because things are good, but because letting go feels harder. We stay, not because we are fulfilled, but because we are afraid of what comes next. We convince ourselves that patience will fix everything. That time will restore what has been lost. That love, no matter how strained, is always enough. But is it? Or are we simply delaying a decision we already know we have to make? This is where awareness begins. Not with certainty, but with questions. Honest questions. Uncomfortable questions. The kind of questions that force you to confront what you've been avoiding. Are you truly happy? Or have you just learned to tolerate unhappiness? Do you feel valued? Or have you adjusted to feeling overlooked? Are you at peace? Or have you become used to emotional chaos? These questions don't demand immediate answers. But they demand honesty. Because without honesty, nothing changes. And without change, nothing improves. Stoicism does not teach us to run away from difficulty. It teaches us to face it directly. With clarity. With courage. With discipline. And sometimes, facing the truth means accepting that something is no longer right for you. Not because you didn't try. Not because you didn't care. But because the reality no longer aligns with what you need, what you deserve, and what allows you to grow. This is not about blaming the other person. It is not about labeling them as good or bad. It is about recognizing compatibility, alignment, and emotional sustainability. Two people can care about each other, and still not be right for each other. Two people can share history, and still not share a future. And holding on to history, while ignoring the present, only creates more pain. The Stoics remind us that everything in life is temporary. People change. Circumstances change. Feelings change. And sometimes, relationships change in ways we didn't expect and didn't want. But reality does not require our approval. It simply exists. And the sooner we accept it, the sooner we can begin to make decisions that serve us, instead of trapping us. This is where the 7 signs begin to reveal themselves more clearly. Not as dramatic warnings, but as consistent patterns. Signals that something deeper is wrong. Signals that, if ignored, will continue to drain you, confuse you, and slowly disconnect you from yourself. The first sign is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It builds quietly, gradually, until one day, you notice it. You feel more drained than fulfilled. At first, it's subtle. You finish a conversation and feel slightly tired. You spend time together and feel a small sense of relief when it ends. You tell yourself it's just stress. Just a long day. Just a temporary feeling. But it keeps happening. Again. And again. And again. Until it becomes a pattern. And patterns reveal truth. You start to realize that the energy you give is not being restored. The effort you put in is not being matched. The emotional investment you make is not being reciprocated. Instead of feeling uplifted, you feel weighed down. Instead of feeling understood, you feel misunderstood. Instead of feeling supported, you feel alone in your efforts. This is not what a healthy connection feels like. A strong relationship should not leave you constantly exhausted. It should not feel like a responsibility you carry, instead of a bond you share. The Stoics believe that your energy is one of your most valuable resources. Where you invest it matters. Who you give it to matters. And if you are constantly giving your energy to something that depletes you, without replenishing you, you have to ask yourself, is this sustainable? Because over time, emotional exhaustion doesn't just stay in the relationship. It spreads. It affects your focus, your motivation, your mental clarity, your sense of self. You become more irritable, more distant, more disconnected, not just from them, but from yourself. And the most dangerous part is this. You begin to normalize it. You start to believe that this is just how relationships are. That constant exhaustion is part of love. That feeling drained is something you have to accept. But it isn't. And the longer you accept it, the deeper it affects you. The Stoics would challenge you to look at this without emotion, without attachment, without excuses. Just observation. Are you gaining energy from this relationship? Or losing it? Because the answer to that question tells you more than you may want to admit. And this is only the beginning. Because when one sign appears, others often follow. Slowly. Quietly. Until the truth becomes impossible to ignore. The second sign reveals itself more slowly, but its impact is deeper. You are no longer growing. At the beginning, everything feels expansive. You feel inspired, motivated, driven. You talk about your goals, your plans, your vision for the future. There is movement. There is progress. There is a sense that being together is pushing both of you forward. But over time, something shifts. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens in small compromises, small sacrifices, small decisions that seem harmless at first. You delay a goal. You stay silent about something that matters to you. You begin to adjust your behavior, not to grow, but to avoid conflict. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to shrink. Not physically, not visibly, but internally. Your ambitions become quieter. Your standards become lower. Your expectations become smaller. You start choosing comfort over growth, peace over progress, silence over expression. And at first, it feels like stability. It feels like you are maintaining harmony. But deep down, there is a part of you that knows something is off. Because growth has stopped. And where there is no growth, there is stagnation. The Stoics believe that life is about constant improvement. Becoming wiser, stronger, more disciplined, more aligned with your purpose. And anything that consistently pulls you away from that path must be questioned. A relationship should not require you to abandon your evolution. It should not force you to choose between love and becoming who you are meant to be. But when growth stops, something else begins. Resentment. At first, it's subtle. You don't even recognize it. You just feel slightly frustrated, slightly restricted, slightly unfulfilled. But over time, that feeling grows. You begin to notice what you've given up. Opportunities you didn't take. Decisions you made, not for yourself, but for the relationship. And even if you never say it out loud, it starts to affect how you feel. Not just about them, but about yourself. Because deep down, you know you are capable of more. You know there is a version of you that is stronger, more focused, more fulfilled. But you are not becoming that version. You are holding yourself back. And the hardest part is this: no one is forcing you. You are choosing it. Choosing comfort. Choosing familiarity. Choosing to stay where you are, instead of moving forward. Stoicism teaches responsibility. Not just for your actions, but for your direction in life. And when you look honestly at your situation, you have to ask: am I becoming better in this relationship? Or am I becoming less of who I could be? Because time does not pause. Every day you stay in a situation that limits your growth is a day you do not get back. And eventually, that realization becomes heavier than the fear of leaving. That is when clarity begins. The third sign is more direct, but often ignored. Respect has quietly disappeared. Not all at once. Not in obvious ways. But gradually. In small moments. In subtle behaviors. In things that are easy to dismiss, until they become a pattern. Respect is not just about how someone speaks to you. It is about how they treat your presence. Your opinions. Your boundaries. Your emotions. When respect is present, you feel it. You feel heard. You feel considered. You feel valued, even during disagreements. But when respect begins to fade, the shift is undeniable. They interrupt you more. They dismiss your concerns. They minimize your feelings. They cross boundaries you clearly set, and act as if it's not a big deal. And each time it happens, you are faced with a choice. Address it, or ignore it. At first, you might speak up. You might explain how you feel. You might try to correct it. But if nothing changes, something inside you begins to adapt. You start lowering your expectations. You start tolerating things you once wouldn't accept. You start convincing yourself that it's not worth the argument. That it's easier to let it go. But every time you let it go, you lose something. A piece of your voice. A piece of your confidence. A piece of your self-respect. And over time, that loss adds up. The Stoics placed immense value on dignity. Not arrogance. Not pride. But self-respect. The understanding that your worth is not something to be negotiated. And when you remain in a situation where you are consistently disrespected, you are not just being affected by someone else's behavior. You are allowing it. That is a difficult truth. But it is an important one. Because it brings the focus back to what you can control. You cannot force someone to respect you. You cannot change their behavior through hope alone. But you can decide what you tolerate. You can decide what you accept. You can decide where you stay, and where you walk away. Respect is not something you beg for. It is something that should be naturally present. And if it isn't, you have to ask yourself why you are staying in a place where it is missing. Because without respect, everything else eventually breaks down. Communication weakens. Trust fades. Connection deteriorates. And what remains is not strong enough to sustain a meaningful relationship. At this point, the pattern is becoming clearer. It's not just one issue. It's not just a bad phase. It's a combination of signs, each one reinforcing the other. You feel drained. You are no longer growing. Respect is fading. And yet, you may still find yourself holding on. Not because everything is good, but because letting go feels uncertain. This is where the next sign begins to take shape. And it is one of the most deceptive. Because it disguises itself as optimism. But in reality, it keeps you stuck. And that is what we will uncover next. The fourth sign is one that keeps people trapped longer than they should be. You keep hoping they will change. Hope feels powerful. It gives you a reason to stay. A reason to believe. A reason to endure things that you normally wouldn't accept. You tell yourself that things will improve. That they didn't really mean what they said. That they are just going through something. That with enough time, enough patience, enough understanding, they will become the person you need them to be. And in the beginning, this hope feels justified. Because you've seen glimpses of it. Moments where they showed effort. Moments where things felt right again. Moments that remind you of how it used to be. And you hold on to those moments. You replay them in your mind. You use them as evidence that the relationship still has potential. But here is where clarity becomes necessary. Moments are not patterns. And potential is not reality. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what is consistent, not what is occasional. Not what appears once in a while, but what shows up repeatedly. Because consistency reveals truth. And if you look honestly, without emotional attachment, without excuses, you begin to see the pattern. The same issues return. The same behaviors repeat. The same conversations lead nowhere. You talk about change, but nothing actually changes. You express how you feel, but nothing improves. You wait, and wait, and wait. And slowly, time passes. Weeks turn into months. Months turn into years. And the version of them you are hoping for never fully arrives. At some point, you have to ask yourself a difficult question. Am I in love with who they are? Or who I want them to become? Because those are not the same thing. Loving someone for their potential is one of the most painful traps you can fall into. Because you are not experiencing that potential. You are imagining it. And the longer you stay attached to that imagined version, the more disconnected you become from reality. The Stoics remind us to accept people as they are. Not as we wish them to be. Not as they could be under different circumstances. But as they consistently show themselves to be. And if who they are, repeatedly, does not align with what you need, then no amount of hope will change that. Hope, in this context, becomes dangerous. Because it delays action. It keeps you waiting in a situation that is not improving. It convinces you to invest more time, more energy, more emotion into something that is not giving you the same in return. And the cost of that is not just time. It is your peace, your growth, your emotional well-being. There comes a moment where you have to stop asking, "What if they change?" and start asking, "What if they don't?" Because that question forces you to face reality. Not possibility. Not imagination. But truth. And truth is what allows you to make decisions that actually serve you. The fifth sign is one of the most painful to experience. You feel alone, even when you are together. This kind of loneliness is different. It's not about being physically alone. It's about emotional disconnection. You can be sitting right next to them and still feel distant. You can be having a conversation and still feel unheard. You can be sharing space and still feel like you don't truly exist in their world. At first, it's confusing. Because from the outside, everything might look normal. You spend time together. You talk. You go through daily routines. But something is missing. Something important. Connection. Real connection. The kind where you feel seen. Understood. Valued. Without that, everything else begins to feel empty. Conversations become surface level. Interactions feel forced. Silence becomes uncomfortable, not peaceful. And slowly, you stop expressing yourself the way you used to. You stop sharing deeply. You stop opening up. Because it feels like it doesn't make a difference. This is where emotional withdrawal begins. Not as a decision, but as a response. A response to feeling unseen, unheard, unimportant. And over time, this creates distance. Not just between you and them, but within yourself. Because humans are wired for connection. Not just physical presence, but emotional presence. And when that is missing, the relationship starts to feel like an empty space. Something that exists, but doesn't fulfill. The Stoics understood the importance of meaningful relationships. Not just having people around, but having genuine connection. Because without that, there is no depth, no real bond, no foundation. And when you begin to feel consistently alone in a relationship, it is no longer functioning the way it should. It becomes a place where you exist, but do not truly belong. And that realization is heavy, because it forces you to confront a difficult truth. You are already experiencing the loneliness you are trying to avoid by staying. The sixth sign builds on that feeling and intensifies it. You are constantly anxious. Not occasionally. Not in specific situations. But consistently. Your mind is always active. Always analyzing. Always questioning. You overthink their words. You replay conversations. You try to interpret their behavior. You look for meaning in small actions. You wonder where you stand. You wonder what they feel. You wonder what might happen next. There is no stability. No sense of certainty. Just ongoing mental tension. At first, you may think this is normal. That it's just part of caring. Part of being emotionally invested. But there is a difference between caring and feeling unstable. A healthy relationship does not keep you in a constant state of doubt. It does not make you question your value. It does not create an environment where you feel like you have to constantly figure things out. Instead, it provides clarity, consistency, security. But when anxiety becomes your default state, something is wrong. And your mind is trying to tell you. Stoicism teaches awareness of your inner state. Your thoughts. Your emotions. Your reactions. Not to suppress them, but to understand them. Because your internal experience is often a reflection of your external environment. And if your environment is consistently creating anxiety, confusion, and emotional tension, then it is not aligned with your well-being. Living in constant anxiety changes you. It affects how you think, how you feel, how you behave. You become more cautious, more guarded, more uncertain. You start walking on eggshells, trying to avoid conflict, trying to maintain balance, trying to keep things from falling apart. But in doing so, you lose your sense of ease, your sense of calm, your sense of self. And over time, this becomes exhausting. Because you are not just in a relationship. You are managing a constant emotional state. One that never fully settles. One that never allows you to relax. And that is not what love is supposed to feel like. At this stage, everything is becoming clearer. The patterns are no longer subtle. They are consistent. You feel drained. You are not growing. Respect is fading. You are holding on to hope instead of reality. You feel alone. You feel anxious. And yet, there is still one final sign. The most honest one. The one that does not rely on observation, but on awareness. And once you face it, everything changes. Subscribe to this channel for more.